My name is Vera Chen, and I built my company from nothing, only to watch my partner steal everything I worked for. But that boardroom meeting where he thought he destroyed me, that's when I showed him what real power looks like. Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from and hit like and subscribe if you've ever had someone betray your trust and lived to regret it. I never thought I'd be telling this story. 5 years ago, I was a 28-year-old venture capitalist, working at Meridian Capital in Boulder, Colorado, a city most people overlook, but where serious money moves quietly through the mountains. I'd made my name identifying tech startups that others missed, turning forgotten companies into million-dollar acquisitions. My specialty was finding diamonds in the rough, those scrappy entrepreneurs who reminded me of myself, growing up in a middle-class family where every dollar was stretched. I learned early that success meant outworking everyone else. My parents owned a small accounting firm, and I spent countless evenings doing homework in their office. Listening to them help small business owners navigate financial struggles. That's where I met Marcus Whitfield. He walked into Meridian Capital with a presentation about agricultural technology that most VCs would have laughed out of the room. But I saw something others missed, a revolutionary irrigation system that could transform farming in drought-prone regions. Marcus was passionate, brilliant, and completely naive about business. He was also charming in that understated way. That makes you trust someone immediately tall, with sandy hair and these earnest blue eyes that lit up when he talked about helping farmers. He'd grown up on a ranch in Wyoming, and there was something authentic about him that felt refreshing in a world full of polished presentations and empty promises. I convinced Meridian to give him seed funding, but more than that, I became his mentor. We spent months refining his business plan, and somewhere between late-night strategy sessions and celebrating small victories, we became friends, real friends, the kind where you share your biggest fears and wildest dreams. Marcus would tell me about his vision of transforming agriculture, making it sustainable and profitable for small farmers. I'd share my own dreams of starting my own firm, of proving that you didn't need family money or Ivy League connections to build something meaningful. We understood each other's hunger in a way that felt rare. 6 months later, his company, Aquatech Solutions, secured its first major contract. The irrigation system worked exactly as promised, reducing water usage by 40% while increasing crop yields by year 2. We had agricultural companies across the Southwest desperate for our technology. That's when Marcus proposed something that changed everything. Vera, I want you to be my business partner, not just an investor, an equal partner. We'll build this together. I was hesitant. Leaving Meridian meant walking away from a 6-figure salary and the security I'd worked so hard to achieve. But Marcus was persuasive, and the numbers were compelling. Aquatech was projected to be worth $50 million within 5 years. More than that, I believed in him. I believed in us. The early days of our partnership were everything I dreamed of. We incorporated as Aquatech Solutions, LLC, with both of U.S. holding equal 50% stakes. I brought the financial expertise and business connections. Marcus brought the technical innovation and agricultural knowledge. We set up headquarters in a converted warehouse in Boulder's tech corridor, and I threw myself into building the business side while Marcus focused on R&D. I negotiated contracts, managed cash flow, and built relationships with distributors across the country. Within 8 months, we'd gone from 2 employees to 35. Marcus and I made a formidable team. He was the visionary, the face of the company at agricultural conferences and trade shows. I was the strategist, the one who turned his innovations into profitable business models. We complemented each other perfectly, or so I thought. The first warning sign came during our 3rd year. I noticed Marcus becoming more secretive about certain meetings, claiming they were just technical consultations that didn't require my presence. He started having private conversations with our CFO, David Kim, conversations that stopped when I entered the room. But the company was thriving. We'd secured partnerships with major agricultural corporations, and our technology was being implemented. Across 10 states, revenue was approaching $20 million annually, and we were on track for that $50 million valuation Marcus had predicted. I was working 16-hour days, managing everything from investor relations to supply chain logistics. Marcus seemed to be pulling back from the day-to-day operations, delegating more responsibilities to me while he focused on what he called strategic initiatives. I didn't question it. I trusted him completely. The irony wasn't lost on me. The girl who'd spent her childhood watching her parents struggle to keep their small business afloat was now running a company that employed dozens of people and generated millions in revenue. My parents were proud, but they worried about how consumed I'd become with work. "Vera," my mother said during one of our monthly dinners, "you look exhausted. When's the last time you took a vacation?" I laughed. "Mom, we're building something incredible. The sacrifices will be worth it." She exchanged a look with my father. "Just make sure you're protecting yourself, sweetheart. Business partnerships can be complicated." I dismissed her concern. Marcus and I had built something based on mutual respect and shared vision. What could go wrong? The first real crack in our partnership appeared during a board meeting in our 4th year. We were discussing expansion into international markets, and Marcus presented a proposal I'd never seen before. "I've been working with a consulting firm in Denver," he announced, pulling up a presentation on the conference room screen. "They've identified opportunities in South America that could triple our revenue within 2 years. I stared at the slides, my mind racing. The financial projections were aggressive, almost reckless. More concerning was the fact that this was the first I'd heard of any international expansion plans. "Marcus," I said carefully, "when did you start working with this consulting firm? And why wasn't I involved in these discussions?" He shifted uncomfortably. "I wanted to get preliminary information before bringing it to you. I didn't want to waste your time if it wasn't viable." The other board members, including our lead investor from Meridian Capital, looked between. U.S. Sensing tension, I forced a smile and suggested we table the discussion until Marcus and I could review the proposal together. After the meeting, I confronted him privately. "We agreed to make major decisions together," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "International expansion isn't something you explore without your business partner." Marcus ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I'd learned meant he was stressed. "Vera, you're right. I should have included you from the beginning, but you're so busy with operations." And I thought, "You thought what?" "That I couldn't handle strategic planning and daily operations?" My frustration was building. "I've been managing both while you've been having mysterious meetings and working on secret projects." "That's not fair," he said, his voice taking on an edge I'd never heard before. "I've been working just as hard." "As you have, maybe harder." The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd been sacrificing everything, my social life, my health, my relationships, to build our company, and he thought he was working harder. I walked out of his office without another word. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I started keeping detailed records of everything. Every meeting, every decision, every financial transaction. Something felt wrong, and I needed to protect myself. The truth began to emerge during our 5th year, and it was worse than I'd imagined. It started with a routine audit. Our accountant, Sarah Martinez, called me on a Tuesday morning with concern in her voice. "Vera, I need to discuss some irregularities in our financial statements. Can we meet privately?" We met at a coffee shop away from the office. Sarah spread out financial documents across the small table, her expression grave. "I've been reviewing our accounts payable, and there are some consulting fees that don't match our approved budget. Specifically, payments to Whitfield Consulting Group totaling almost $2 million over the past 18 months. My blood ran cold. Whitfield Consulting Group? It's registered in Wyoming. Same address as Marcus's family ranch. Sarah's voice was quiet but firm. "Vera, I think Marcus has been paying himself through a shell company." The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too loud. I stared at the documents, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. $2 million paid to a company that, as far as I knew, didn't exist. "There's more," Sarah continued. "I found communications between Marcus and David Kim about redirecting certain contracts through affiliated companies that Marcus has financial interests in." I spent the next 3 days conducting my own investigation. What I discovered: was a systematic pattern of financial manipulation that had been going on for over 2 years. Marcus had been using his position to direct Aquatech's business to companies he secretly owned, collecting fees on both sides of transactions. The international expansion he proposed, it was designed to funnel money through additional shell companies, with Marcus collecting consulting fees while Aquatech bore all the risk. But the worst betrayal was still to come. I confronted Marcus. On a Friday afternoon in his office, I'd prepared meticulously, documenting every fraudulent transaction, every conflict of interest, every breach of fiduciary duty. "We need to talk," I said. Closing his office door behind me, Marcus looked up from his computer, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before, guilt mixed with defiance. "I know about Whitfield Consulting Group," I said simply. "I know about the shell companies. I know about the contracts you've been redirecting." For a moment, he said nothing. Then he leaned back in his chair with a casualness that made my stomach turn. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out," he said. "You always were thorough." His calm admission was somehow worse than denial would have been. "Marcus, you've stolen almost $3 million from our company, from me. Stolen is a strong word," he replied. Standing up and walking to the window, "I've been compensated for work I've done. Work that you weren't even aware of, work that you hid from me, work that created conflicts of interest and violated every partnership agreement we signed." Marcus turned back to me, and the man I trusted completely was gone. In his place was someone cold, calculating. "Here's the thing, Vera. You can make this as complicated as you want, but the reality is simple. You can't prove criminal intent. These were legitimate business transactions between separate entities." Legitimate? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You created shell companies to steal from your own business partner. I created opportunities. And if you want to fight this, I'll make sure everyone knows that Aquatech's success was built on my innovations, not your spreadsheets." He walked back to his desk and pulled out a folder. "In fact, I've already prepared for this conversation. I'm calling a shareholders meeting for next Friday. I have a proposal I think you'll find interesting." My hands were shaking as I took the folder. Inside was a proposal for Marcus to buy out my shares at a valuation of $12 million, 40% below what our company was actually worth. "You're trying to force me out," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I am giving you an opportunity to walk away with dignity intact, take the $12 million, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and this all goes away quietly. And if I refuse?" Marcus smiled, and it was the coldest expression I'd ever seen. "Then I'll make sure everyone knows that you've been mismanaging company finances and that your removal is necessary for Aquatech's survival. I have David Kim's support, and I can make a compelling case to our board." I stared at him, this man I'd trusted with my dreams, my future, my reputation. "You planned this, all of it." "I planned to protect what I built. You were a valuable investor, Vera, but Aquatech is my vision, my innovation, my company." I walked out of his office knowing that everything I'd worked for was about to be stolen from me. That weekend, I barely slept. I paced my apartment, alternating between rage and despair. Marcus had outmaneuvered me completely. He'd used our friendship, our partnership, to position himself to steal everything we built together. But on Sunday morning, something shifted. I was sitting on my balcony, watching the sunrise over the Rocky Mountains, when I remembered something my father had taught me when I was 12. I'd been devastated after losing a tennis match to a girl who'd been cheating, calling shots out that were clearly in. I complained to my father that it wasn't fair. "That cheater's always won, Vera," he'd said. "Sometimes people will try to take what's yours through deception, but they can only succeed if you let them. Real power comes from being smarter, more prepared, and more patient than your opponent." I'd been thinking like a victim instead of like a strategist. Marcus had shown me his hand. He was planning to force me out through manipulation and intimidation. But he'd made a crucial mistake. He assumed I was powerless. I spent Sunday researching corporate law, partnership agreements, and fiduciary duty. I called lawyers, accountants, and business consultants. By Monday morning, I had a plan. The first step was securing allies. I met with Sarah Martinez, our accountant, and laid out everything I discovered. Sarah was horrified by the scope of Marcus's deception and agreed to help document the financial irregularities. Next, I reached out to our employees, not to gossip or create drama, but to understand the company's operational structure better. I discovered that Marcus had been largely absent from day-to-day operations for months, leaving most of the actual work to department heads who reported to me. Then I made the most important call of all, to Vera Chen, my former boss at Meridian Capital and the lead investor in Aquatech. Rebecca had been a mentor to me, and I needed her advice. Vera, she said when I finished explaining the situation, "I'm sorry this is happening, but I'm not surprised. Marcus always struck me as someone who confused charm with competence. Rebecca, I need to know where Meridian stands. If this goes to a board vote, I need to understand the dynamics." There was a pause. "Meridian invested in Aquatech because of your due diligence and business acumen. We've watched you build the operational infrastructure that's made the company successful. If Marcus thinks he can simply force you out, he's miscalculated." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Meridian Capital values competence over charisma, and from what you've told me, Marcus has been engaging in behavior that puts our investment at risk." I felt the first spark of hope I'd experienced in days. By Thursday, I was ready. I'd spent the week gathering evidence, securing support, and preparing for the shareholders' meeting. But my real strategy was something Marcus would never expect. I called him that evening. "Marcus, I've been thinking about your proposal," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I want to discuss the terms." "I'm glad you're being reasonable," he replied. And I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. "The $12 million is fair, considering. Actually, I have a counter-proposal. What if instead of you buying my shares, I buy yours?" Marcus laughed. "Vera, you don't have that kind of money. My shares are worth $25 million at current valuation. What if I told you I've secured financing?" The laughter stopped. "What kind of financing?" "Private equity. I've been talking to some investors who are very interested in Aquatech's technology. They're willing to back my acquisition of your shares at full market value." It was a bluff, but it was based on real conversations I'd had with contacts at Meridian and other investment firms. They'd all expressed interest in Aquatech, particularly in the operational expertise I'd built. That's not how this works," Marcus said, his voice less certain now. "You can't just buy me out. Actually, I can according to our partnership agreement. Either partner can trigger a buyout if the other partner has engaged in actions detrimental to the company. Financial misconduct, for example." The silence stretched between us. Marcus was realizing that his own theft had given me legal grounds to force him out. "You can't prove misconduct," he said finally. "I have documentation of every fraudulent transaction, every conflict of interest, every breach of fiduciary duty. I also have testimony from our accountant and support from our lead investor." "This is ridiculous. I built this company's core technology. Without me, Aquatech is just a distribution company." "You're right about one thing," I said. "You did develop the core technology, but I built everything else. The partnerships, the distribution networks, the operational systems, the financial structure, and most importantly, I built them honestly." "I'll fight this," Marcus said, his voice now openly hostile. "I'll make sure everyone knows that you've been stealing from your own company for 2 years, that you tried to force out your business partner through fraud and intimidation. Please, Marcus, make sure everyone knows." I hung up, my hands shaking with adrenaline. The shareholders' meeting was held in Aquatech's main conference room on a cold Friday morning in February. Present were Marcus and me, Vera Chen from Meridian Capital, David Kim, our CFO, and 2 other board members. Marcus opened the meeting with a presentation about the company's future direction. He spoke confidently about his vision for international expansion and the need for streamlined leadership. Then he made his proposal. Aquatech would buy out my shares for $12 million, allowing him to assume full control of the company. "This transition will allow Aquatech to move forward with unified leadership," Marcus concluded. "Vera has been a valuable partner, but the company has evolved beyond what a partnership structure can effectively manage." Rebecca Chen raised her hand. Before we consider any proposals, I'd like to address some concerns that have come to our attention. Regarding company finances, Marcus's confident expression flickered. I'm not sure what you're referring to. I'm referring to approximately $3 million in payments to companies that Marcus has financial interests in. Payments that were made without board approval or disclosure. The room fell silent. David Kim, who'd been Marcus's ally, suddenly looked uncomfortable. Rebecca continued. Meridian Capital has conducted its own investigation into these transactions. We've found evidence of systematic self-dealing that violates Marcus's fiduciary duty to the company and its shareholders. That's not, Marcus started, but I cut him off. I have documentation of every transaction, I said, sliding folders across the table to each board member. Financial records, emails, legal documents establishing the shell companies, everything is there. The board members reviewed the documents in silence. I watched Marcus's face as he realized his careful plan was collapsing. Even if there were irregularities, Marcus said, his voice strained, they don't justify a hostile takeover. You're right, I said. They don't justify a hostile takeover, they justify a payout based on misconduct. I stood up and walked to the head of the table. I'm invoking Section 73 of our partnership agreement, which allows either partner to acquire the other's shares. At fair market value, if that partner has engaged in actions detrimental to the company, you can't afford to buy me out, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Actually, I can. I pulled out a letter of intent from my briefcase. Sterling Capital Partners has agreed to provide financing for the acquisition. They're offering $30 million for Marcus's shares, $5 million above current market value. The room erupted. Marcus stood up, his face flushed with anger. This is orchestrated. You planned this. I plan to protect the company we built together, I replied calmly. You plan to steal from it. Rebecca Chen looked around the table. I move that we accept Vera's proposal to acquire Marcus's shares, contingent on a complete financial audit and the implementation of stronger corporate governance policies. The motion was seconded and approved by a vote of 4-1. With only Marcus dissenting, the next 30 days were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. Financial audits and transition planning. Marcus hired lawyers and threatened litigation. But his position grew weaker as more evidence of his misconduct emerged. The financial audit revealed that his theft was even more extensive than I'd initially discovered. He'd been systematically redirecting company resources for over 3 years. Not 2, the total amount exceeded $4 million. Marcus's lawyers eventually advised him to accept the payout rather than face criminal charges. Sterling Capital Partners finalized the acquisition, and I became the sole owner of Aquatech Solutions. But the real satisfaction came from what happened. Next, on my first day as sole owner, I called an all-hands meeting. Our 35 employees gathered in the main conference room, many of them nervous about the company's future. I want to be transparent about what's happened, I began. There have been significant changes in leadership, and I know that creates uncertainty. But I want you to know that Aquatech's core mission remains unchanged. We're still committed to revolutionizing agricultural technology and supporting farmers worldwide. I announced promotions for several department heads who'd been instrumental in the company's success. I implemented a profit-sharing program that would give employees a stake in the company's future growth. And I established a foundation dedicated to providing Aquatech's technology to small farmers in developing countries. Within 6 months, Aquatech's revenue had increased by 30%. Without Marcus's secret fees and redirected contracts, our profit margins improved dramatically. We launched the international expansion he'd proposed, but did it transparently and ethically. The company Marcus had tried to steal from me was thriving without him. A year after the buyout, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Marcus Vera. He said, his voice subdued. I wanted to apologize. I was in my office, reviewing quarterly reports that showed Aquatech's continued growth. The company was now worth over $60 million. I'm listening, I said. I know what I did was wrong. I let greed and ego cloud my judgment. I betrayed your trust and nearly destroyed something beautiful. Nearly, I agreed. I heard about the foundation, about the profit-sharing program, your doing things I never would have thought of, because you were too busy thinking about how to take from the company instead of how to give back to it. Marcus was quiet for a moment. I deserved what happened. I know that now. But I want you to know that I'm sorry, truly sorry. I appreciate that, I said. But apologies don't undo the damage. No, they don't. But I hope you can find it in yourself to forgive me someday. I looked out my office window at the Rocky Mountains, thinking about the journey that had brought me to this moment. Marcus, I forgave you a long time ago, not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying anger would have poisoned everything I was trying to build. Thank you, he said quietly. But forgiveness doesn't mean trust. And it doesn't mean consequences disappear. You made choices that hurt a lot of people. And those choices have costs. After I hung up, I sat in my office thinking about power, trust, and justice. Marcus had tried to steal my company through manipulation and betrayal. But in the end, his own greed had given me the tools to save what we'd built together. The company was stronger now, more focused on its mission, and more committed to ethical practices. Our employees were happier, our customers were better served, and we were making a real difference in the world. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemy. Sometimes it's about building something so successful, so meaningful, that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. 2 years after becoming sole owner of Aquatech, I was featured on the cover of Forbes magazine. The headline read, "The Irrigation Queen, How Vera Chen Built a $100 million ag tech empire." The article detailed Aquatech's growth, our international expansion, and our commitment to sustainable agriculture. It mentioned the foundation we'd established and the thousands of small farmers who now had access to our technology. It also mentioned the partnership that had started it all, describing it as a cautionary tale about the importance of trust and transparency in business relationships. I kept a copy of the magazine in my desk drawer, not out of pride, but as a reminder of how far I'd come, from a girl doing homework in her parents' accounting office to the owner of a company that was changing agriculture worldwide. The office I now occupied was nothing like the converted warehouse where Marcus and I had started. It was in a gleaming new building in Boulder's Tech District, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered stunning views of the mountains. But success hadn't made me forget the lessons I'd learned. I established strict financial controls, implemented comprehensive audit procedures, and created a corporate governance structure that prevented any single person from having too much power. I also made sure to maintain the relationships that had supported me through the crisis. Rebecca Chun joined Aquatech's board of directors, bringing her expertise and ethical standards to our decision-making process. Sarah Martinez became our chief financial officer, ensuring that our financial practices remained transparent and accountable, most importantly. I never forgot that Aquatech's success was built on the contributions of many people, not just one visionary leader. Our employees were partners in our mission, and I made sure they were rewarded for their contributions. The company culture I created was everything that my partnership with Marcus had failed to be: transparent, collaborative, and built on mutual respect. On a quiet Sunday evening, 3 years after the payout, I was working late in my office when I received an email. That made me pause. It was from a young entrepreneur named Lisa Park, who'd reached out through Aquatech's website. She was developing renewable energy technology for rural communities and was looking for guidance on building a sustainable business. "I read about your story in Forbes," she wrote. "I'm particularly interested in how you navigated the challenges of partnership and business growth. I'm at the stage where I'm considering bringing on a partner, and I want to make sure I protect both my interests and the company's mission." I found myself smiling as I read her message. It reminded me of myself 5 years ago, full of ambition and optimism, ready to trust the right partner with my dreams. I spent an hour crafting a response, sharing the lessons I'd learned about due diligence, legal protections, and the importance of aligned values. But most importantly, I emphasized the need to trust her instincts and never ignore red flags. Building a company is one of the most challenging and rewarding experiences you can have, I wrote. But remember that success isn't just about financial returns. It's about creating something that makes the world better while maintaining your integrity and treating people with respect. After sending the email, I leaned back in my chair and thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me had ultimately made me stronger, more careful, and more committed to ethical business practices. Marcus had tried to steal my company, but in the end, he'd given me something more valuable: the knowledge that I could overcome any challenge through preparation, integrity, and determination. Aquatech was thriving. Our technology was helping farmers worldwide, and I was building a legacy that would outlast any individual partnership or betrayal. The best revenge, I realized, wasn't about getting back at someone who'd wronged you. It was about becoming so successful that their betrayal became just a footnote in your larger story of triumph. 5 years after Marcus tried to steal my company, I received one final communication from him. It was a handwritten letter sent to my home address. Vera, it began, I've been following Aquatech's success, and I wanted you to know how proud I am of what you've accomplished. The company is everything we dreamed it could be, and more. I've spent these years reflecting on my choices and their consequences. I let greed and ego destroy the most important professional relationship I've ever had. I betrayed someone who trusted me completely, and I nearly destroyed something beautiful. I don't expect forgiveness, and I don't expect a response. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I lost when I chose to betray you. It wasn't just a business partnership, it was a friendship, a shared vision, and a chance to build something meaningful together. You were always the better person, and you've proven that by building Aquatech into something that truly changes the world. I hope you find happiness and fulfillment in your success, because you've earned it, with sincere regret and respect. Marcus. I read the letter twice, then filed it away. Marcus's words were sincere, but they came too late to change anything. The damage had been done and the consequences had been faced. But I felt no bitterness as I put the letter away. Marcus had taught me valuable lessons about trust, power, and the importance of protecting what you build. Those lessons had made me a better leader, a better businesswoman, and a better person. Sometimes the people who betray us give us the greatest gifts. Not through their friendship, but through their betrayal. They force us to become stronger, more independent, and more committed to our values. Marcus had tried to steal my company, but he'd ended up giving me something more valuable: the knowledge that I could overcome any challenge and build something extraordinary on my own terms. Aquatech continued to grow. Our technology continued to help farmers worldwide, and I continued to build a legacy based on integrity, innovation, and ethical business practices. The company that Marcus had tried to steal from me was now worth over $150 million, employed more than 200 people, and had changed the way agriculture was practiced on 3 continents. And I had built it all while maintaining the values that he had tried to corrupt. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and building something beautiful that outlasts the betrayal. Have you ever had someone try to steal your dreams and discovered that their betrayal only made you stronger? Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't about getting back at someone. It's about building something so successful that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. If my story resonated with you, hit like, subscribe to Silent Revenge, and share your truth in the comments, because sometimes justice whispers and still echoes forever.